Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Madhum.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Madhavanand Prabhu.
So nice to see you. Where are you staying in Mayapur? Is it a secret or
Same place.
same place you have been before? Yeah, I was wondering. It's comfortable for you? Everything's okay?
Yeah, everything is fine.
It was a bit of a shock for us. I think it must have been a shock for you. You couldn't go. Anyway, I very nice to see you, and thank you for coming and taking part tonight, Maharaj. So for the devotees who don't know, let me just say a few words of introduction for a very special guest we have tonight. This is Bhakti Vijnana Maharaj. He's originally born in Tashkent, and he joined ISKCON, I don't know, in the early 1980s. He came from a very educated family. Both his parents were academics, and Maharaj himself has a PhD in microbiology. He's written something like 9 different books, and he especially likes to speak about the holy name. He was a GBC member for like 20 years in Moscow and Russia, and he's a wonderful combination of things I find personally. I see him as a true intellectual, but also someone who's very dedicated to the mission. And I find that, Maharaj, I'm speaking to you, I find that a very special combination, because I know a lot of intellectuals and artists, and they have a hard time being part of the institution, being faithful to that. But Maharaj is able to do both of those from a very higher point of view. So actually, some of the devotees requested me to ask Maharaj if he would speak something about the Soviet regime in Russia and what things were like at that time. And he has some things to say about that. He was a brahmachari at that time. But as he confided with me, he said, I'm not so inspired to just tell stories like that. And honestly speaking, if you ask Maharaj to just tell some stories about that, then you just really cheated yourself. Because there's so many people who can tell stories like that. There's so many books and things that you can read. But when you get a chance to associate with an elevated Vaishnava who has deep understandings and can speak in a special way to a particular audience, and you try to just box him up with a particular topic, it'll be your misfortune. That's all that I can say. So I don't want to embarrass Maharaj anymore. Just thank you so much. I know I want to add this small comment. Maharaj has so many people beating on his door from all over the world to speak and to please go there. And so it's really very special that you're giving us some of your very valuable time, Maharaj. I can't express it. I'm just so happy to get to see you. Hare Krishna. So let me get out of the way, and we'll let Maharaj say something. Unless, maybe I should introduce real quick, too, to Tukaram Prabhu. Tukaram Prabhu is a disciple of Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And this is Amritesh Gaur Prabhu, who is also a disciple of Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And they were requested by their Guru Maharaj to come to Bhubaneswar. and to do some youth preaching. And Bhakti Vijnana Maharaj, what they've done is really phenomenal. I mean, I can say, being part of the Bhubaneswar temple since 1993, there wasn't a whole lot going on in terms of preaching to new people, in terms of preaching in the universities. And these two devotees now, I think they have something like 300 members of the IYF. They have 10 different youth hostels that they've opened up. I mean, it's a big financial thing. They're opening all these places, and the students come and they pay money, and they have to chant 4 rounds a day, and they take prasad, and they attend 1 class a day, and like that. And meanwhile, they're attending so many courses. And all the devotees in that course, when I go there, I feel like I'm in Chopati or something. Everybody's just so humble and so very, very sweet. They respect all the devotees so much. So I'm just so appreciative of Tukaram Prabhu and Amritesh Gaur Prabhu. And maybe one or both of you would like to say something in to welcome Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, we are very fortunate that we got the divine association of Maharaj, although in this Zoom platform. But we are so happy also to Madhavanand Prabhu that he arranged this. And Maharaj, without anything, I just want to welcome you on behalf of ISKCON Bhubaneswar and all the Youth Forum devotees, so that we can hear your nectarian katha. Let us all welcome Maharaj by chanting one time Hare Krishna maha-mantra.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Okay. Thank you very much for such kind words and for inviting me. I was very excited when Madhavananda Prabhu told me about this development, and I immediately agreed to come to speak. Actually, I like Odisha. I like Jagannath Puri especially, one of my most favorite places. And so I have some selfish interest in mind while speaking with you. Maybe sometime I will come there and see you in person when all this madness will pass. Regarding topic of my discussion, yes, I was not extremely excited about the first topic which was given to me, although it's understandable that it's interesting for you to hear how it was like. But I've been talking about this so many times, and I'm kind of tired to talk about this again. So I rather prefer to speak something from Srimad Bhagavatam, but because the request was there, I will speak a few words about my background and how I joined and why specifically I joined, because it will be connected with the topic which I will try to present. I will speak from the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, from the teachings of Kapila Dev, where he defines the fundamental principles of the material nature. I will specifically talk about the nature of our consciousness, or chitta, which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu defines in the first verse of Shikshashtaka. Not defines, but says that the main target of the holy name is to purify our chitta, Chetadarpana Marjanam. So I will specifically say what does it mean and what are the ramifications. Why do we have to purify our consciousness? What are the reasons to purify our consciousness? So I'll talk about this, but before I'll speak a few words about my specific background. But let me first chant the verse from the 26th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, and then I'll speak on this topic. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nashtaprayashva Bhadrishu Nitim Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Yam Pravrajantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam Dvaipayana Virahakatara Juhava Putreti Tanmayatayo Taravo Binedus Tam Sarva Bhuta Hridayam Munimanatosmi. So the verse which I have chosen for our discussion tonight is the 22nd verse from the 26th chapter. And in this particular verse, Lord Kapila gives the definition of paribhasha to the element of chitta. He gives a specific lakshanas of chitta by which we can recognize what is chitta, what is our consciousness, what is material consciousness. Chitta is a material consciousness, but still it's a very important element, and we have to really clearly understand how it functions, what it does, why do we have to purify, and what will happen when we will purify the chitta. Why Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu so boldly says that Cheta Darpana Marjanam Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam Shreyah Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam. All these effects are stemming from this Cheta Darpana Marjanam. So we will discuss all this important topic. As Madhavananda Prabhu said that I like to speak about holy name, it's probably because holy name Suresh Acharya. Just let me answer. Okay, just 1 second. Acharya, I'm giving class at the moment. I will be late for your class. I'm really sorry. I'm on Zoom now. Okay?
Okay.
Kshamyatam.
Okay.
So Madhavananda Prabhu said that I like to speak about the holy name. It's purely for my own self-purification and my own improvement. So by speaking about this, I remind myself how important it is to concentrate on the holy name, and how important it is to chant purely, and what does it mean to chant purely. So the verse number 22, Svachatvam Avikaritvam Shantatvam iti Chetasaha Vrittibhir Laksanam Proktam Yathapam Prakritih Para. After manifestation of the Mahatattva, these features appear simultaneously. As water in its natural state before coming in contact with earth is clear, sweet, and unruffled, so the characteristic traits of pure consciousness are complete serenity, clarity, and freedom from distraction. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vijnana Goswami Prabhupada. The pure status of consciousness, or Krishna consciousness, exists in the beginning. Just after creation, consciousness is not polluted. The more one becomes materially contaminated, however, the more consciousness becomes obscured. In pure consciousness, one can perceive a slight reflection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As in clear, unagitated water, free from impurities, one can see everything very clearly. So in pure consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one can see things as they are. One can see the reflection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one can see his own existence as well. This state of consciousness is very pleasing, transparent, and sober. In the beginning, consciousness is pure. So we can see how Prabhupada is connecting this particular verse with a very important and relevant topic for us. What is our conditioned consciousness, and why do we have to purify it, and why it is so important. So let me chant Mangala Charana first, and then I will speak on the topic. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutare Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshitarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Ananda Lilamaya Vigrahaya Himaba Vivechadi Sundaraya Tasmai Mahaprimarasa Pradaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Yandak Pravishya Mama Vachim Imam Prasuptam Sanjeevaya Takila Shakti Darak Swadham Nanyam Shasta Charana Shravanat Vagadim Pranam Namo Bhagavate Purushaya Tubim Svasyastu Vishwasya Kalak Prasidatam Dayantu Bhutani Shivam Mithodya Manascha Vadram Vajatata Dokshaje Aveshyatam No Matir Apyahaitu Ki. Again, Hare Krishna, and welcome to this little talk about the philosophy and practice of Krishna consciousness. So, as I promised, I will start a little bit from my own background and why did I join Hare Krishna movement. Actually, not in my wildest dream, I thought about joining some sort of religious organization. I was quite an atheistic person. And not without a reason. My parents were atheists, my grandparents were atheists, my grandmother, she believed in God, but when I was a small child, I was preaching to her that there is no God. I was very much programmed in this way, and I thought my grandmother, she just utterly stupid, and she doesn't understand the reality of things. And I graduated from Moscow State University, and then I started doing my post-graduation studies, doing a PhD degree in molecular biology in particular, in the Institute of Molecular Biology. When at one point, one friend of mine gave me Bhagavad Gita. And he said, why don't you read it? It was not Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. It was Bhagavad Gita translated by some members of Theosophical Society. Just one simple verses without even much explanation. And I read this little book. It was a small, tiny book. I read this book and I was completely, totally shocked. This book impressed me so much. And the immediate thought which appeared in my mind is that if it's true, I should not live the life which I live now. It was an amazing conclusion, but it was very clear because I kind of understood that there is a higher truth behind this book, even though I can clearly understand now that I didn't understand anything from this book. You know, it was translated in a very flowery language, in a very esoteric language with a lot of strange things there. So I didn't really understand what is the book, but one thing I could clearly understand, that there is some truth behind this. It's not just some words in a paper. It's not just some imagination, some creation of some poet or whatever, there is some higher truth behind this, and not only higher truth, but the truth which, by the fact of its existence, it's very compulsory, that it more or less forces me to change my way of life. We all know it's difficult to change our way of life. We're all programmed, we're all conditioned by our background, by our surrounding, by our relatives. They all want us to behave in a certain way. But just by reading this book, without understanding anything about this book, this thought appeared in my mind: I should change something perhaps in my life. And what struck me, what was the most striking feature of this book, what was the first impression, is that this book is presenting a worldview which is, even though it's totally theistic, it is spiritual, and it's speaking about God, and nevertheless, it's very, very rational. We're used to think that if it is religion, it has to be something totally irrational. And the more irrational it is, the more religious it is. So that's the usual impression, and you just have to blindly believe in it. And basically, the impression which most of the people, especially in the West, have about religion is that, it's something for totally irrational people. And you just have to blindly believe in it, and it's just because you are irrational yourself, this is your shelter. You try to find shelter of something similar to you, and only totally irrational people can be religious. So my first encounter with Bhagavad Gita, or Vedic spirituality, let's put it more properly, with the Vedic culture or Vedic approach to spirituality, changed completely, totally, this misconception which I had. I realized, just again by reading, by just very slight encounter with this book, I realized that spirituality does not have to be irrational. And I don't have to become irrational by practicing spirituality. I still can retain my rationality and at the same time practice some spiritual life, which was a great discovery for me. I don't have to believe in some superstitions. I don't have to become stupid, and I don't have to become a fanatic. I don't have to become dogmatic. I can remain normal human being, but at the same time practice some sort of religion or spirituality. That was a great discovery for me, and actually that was first step towards this, because as I said in the beginning, why I never thought about joining any religious organization, because I thought it would change my personality in a certain way which I didn't want to have. So and that's why I started practicing. I started chanting at that time. My friend who gave me Bhagavad Gita, he said, "Why don't you chant?" And because I had this idea that I have to change something in my life, and I didn't know what I have to change. So this suggestion from my friend was very welcome. I realized that, this is something which I can change in my life. Now I can chant something, and even though, when I started chanting, sometimes I looked from the objective point at myself, and I was asking myself, what are you doing? You are a scientist. What is going on with you? Nevertheless, this experience of chanting gave me something very special. I also could realize that it's not just parrot repetition, as Prabhupada used to say. There is again something much higher behind this, and that was also very intriguing to me. I mean, because I'm a scientist, I was born under the Mrigashira Nakshatra, and those people, Prabhupada also was born under Mrigashira Nakshatra. That's his nakshatra of his birth. Those people who are born in Mrigashira Nakshatra, or Mrigashira, yeah, they are very inquisitive. They always want to know something new. They are really, they want to investigate things. So for me, the journey for Krishna consciousness started from this desire to investigate something new, to explore different way of life, and to explore different possibilities in life and different experiences which I may have. And I'm still exploring this. Actually, the friend of mine told me that, if you will chant this Hare Krishna mantra, you will see some aura around people. And I was very interested. I thought, really far out. I will see some aura. I don't see any aura, and I started chanting with this idea in mind. I have to confess that 40 years later, I still don't see any aura. But nevertheless, the process is remaining very interesting, because every day something new is happening. And in this journey, I made some very important discoveries, which are very, treasurous for myself. I treasure them a lot. Very important discoveries, how my mind works, what I need really, and so many other things. Some of them I will share with you tonight. But, the communistic government was not really happy that some people joined Krishna consciousness movement, and they started a huge campaign. But what is the most amazing for me is that even though at that time I was very remotely connected with Krishna consciousness movement, when the secret police, the KGB, the intelligence service, not intelligence service, but secret police, came to my place of work and threatened me. What is the most amazing for me still to this date is that I was not tempted or seduced, or I didn't change my conviction. Moreover, even though they threatened me, they told me, we will put you in prison, we will stop your career, you will be suffering, you will be nobody, you will not get any education, you will never get your degree. So despite of all these threats, little did they know that by saying this, they only increased my conviction that there must be something very important in this Krishna consciousness movement. And I will explain why. At that time, devotees in Russia, it was a very strange scene. There were only a few dozens of devotees. They were from very variegated backgrounds. They were not really, anyone whom you would consider as a threat. And at this time, the whole state machinery, the whole state of persecution machinery of the state started persecuting this handful of devotees, including my humble self, who didn't even, I wasn't even a devotee, I was just, chanting a little bit and still was not really decided. But the reaction of the state really proved to me that there is something behind this Krishna consciousness movement. There must be something. They should know better. I may not understand the influence of this movement, but the secret police must know better because this is their job. So since that time, I consider secret police of Russia one of my Vartma Pradarshaka guru. They really convinced me that I must follow this path. So that's my little involvement, the little story how I became involved, and how just from the sense of contrariness, I became a devotee. I mean, this is my nature, and I guess I am in Radharani's camp. She's also contrary. But anyway, so I became a devotee just from the sense of contrariness. The state didn't want me to become a devotee. I thought, okay, that's a good reason for me to become a devotee. Anyway, but as I already said to you, despite my involvement with Krishna consciousness movement, I try to retain my rationality and scientific approach towards things. And that probably, I mean, that gives a little flavor to my presentations. When I start speaking some scientific sort of language or explain certain things from Srimad Bhagavatam from the scientific point of view, it has its attraction for certain people, and it definitely has an attraction to myself. And of course, that's the reason why this particular chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam and the whole presentation of Lord Kapila Dev is very important for me. Maybe at some other point, I'll have a chance to speak about 29th chapter of the 3rd canto, which explains devotional service in the modes of nature. It's a very, very interesting chapter, which I studied in depth, and I may share with you something about this. But for today, I wanted to speak about this nature of consciousness and the 3 main characteristics of the nature of consciousness, and what will happen when we will return to this original state of consciousness. Srila Prabhupada is very emphatic. He says the original state of our consciousness, material consciousness, chitta, is pure, and by as much as the drop of the water before it touches the ground is pure. The rain water, when it falls from the sky, is pure. In a similar way, originally, when we just come in contact with the, I mean, of course, there are different theories. I'm not going to touch this, but in any case, we have to understand that there is an original state of our consciousness, original in the sense that it's by nature like this. And Kapila Dev explains that in macrocosm there is maha-tattva, and maha-tattva is the first material element which evolves from Prakriti. Prakriti is unmanifest state of material energy, but when the Prakriti is agitated by the energy of Kala, which is actually the glance of the Lord. The glance of the Lord by touching the unmanifest state of material nature, agitates this material nature, and it injects jivas, the jiva souls, conditioned souls, into the material nature with their karma. And these jivas, they throw this balanced state of material nature into imbalanced state. And the evolution starts, and the first element, which is highly sattvic and very transparent, is called Mahatattva. This Mahatattva is the original material element, and on our body, within our consciousness, it is present as Chitta. And as it is said in the previous verse, it is Bhagavat Padam. As Prabhupada beautifully explains this, it's the space or Padam, the stage where we can meet with the Supreme Lord or worship the Supreme Lord. Actually, that's very interesting, because when your consciousness becomes pure, when your Chitta becomes pure, then the spirituality or the relationship with the Lord become very natural. You don't have any doubts whether God exists or not. All the doubts which we may have at present state is due to the impurities, due to the influence of Tamagun and Rajagun within our consciousness. But when the consciousness becomes pure, as it is said here, when the consciousness becomes pure, it reestablishes the first quality of the consciousness. The three qualities of Chitta, which is present within ourselves, but which fully manifest only when the Chitta becomes very pure due to the chanting of the holy name. The first quality is Svachatvam. And Svachatvam, you all know what it means. You know, Svacha Bharat. You know, we all follow this Modi's program, Clean Bharat. Svachatvam means cleanliness, but Sridhar Swami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Srila Prabhupada, they gloss this particular quality. Svachatvam means basically transparency. The Chitta in its original state, it's transparent, and Sridhar Swami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they gloss this Svachatvam or transparency as Bhagavat Bimba Grahitvam. Or as Prabhupada says, that the pure Chitta can have little reflection of Bhagavan, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhagavat Bimba Grahitvam means that when the Chitta becomes so pure, we see the reflection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within our Chitta, and we worship Him. And also Prabhupada also explains very important things. When our Chitta becomes pure, we see not only the reflection of God within our consciousness, we see the reflection of ourselves within our consciousness, which we unfortunately don't see at this moment, because our consciousness is covered by these lower modes of material nature, or by this aspect of Maya, which is called Avaranatmika Shakti. This Avaranatmika Shakti puts the avarana, the covering over our consciousness, and we don't see ourselves. As it is said in Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, Chitta Vritti Nirodha, Yoga's Chitta Vritti Nirodha, and then Tada Drashtu Svarupa Avasthanaha. Then when your Chitta becomes clear, when there is no disturbance in the Chitta, and we will explain what disturbance in the Chitta means next, but then Tada Drashtuh Svarupa Avasthana, Tada, at that time, Drashtuh, the seer, the soul, the source of consciousness, the seed of consciousness within ourselves, it becomes established in its Svarupa, and he sees his own Svarupa. I was told a beautiful story about Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj. I really like this beautiful story, little story. Once a devotee asked him, Guru Maharaj, please tell me, what is our Svarupa? Because it's a big question and controversial question in our Sampradaya. Do we have our Svarupa already, or the Svarupa has to be given to us by a Guru? And, there are different opinions. But the answer of Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj was amazing and very strong. He said, everything is already within you. And he quoted simple verse from the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita to prove this. Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate asataha. He said, something which has existed, it never can disappear, So he said, it's already within you. And basically that's what Srila Prabhupada also says here. When your consciousness becomes clear, Bhagavan Bimba Grahitvam, you see the reflection of the Lord within the mirror of your heart, and you see your own reflection. Tadadrastuh Svarupa Vastanaha, according to the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, third Sutra of Patanjali, Yoga Sutra, you will be established in your own Svarupa, and you will see the reflection of Svarupa in this pure consciousness. So that's the first quality of Chitta, Svachatvam, the reflexive ability. And therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he compares our Chitta with Darpana. He compares it with the mirror. The mirror has the reflective ability, but at this moment, the mirror of our consciousness, the mirror of our heart is polluted, and therefore we don't have clear perception of the world even. We don't see the world clearly. Prabhupada says in this purport, then when our consciousness becomes clear, clean and transparent, not only we will see the Supreme Lord, we will very clearly see the world around us as it is. Whereas now we have very perverted perception of the world. In other words, if you are a scientist and if you want to know the things as they are, you have to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. As much as, I have these glasses, you have to clean these glasses every now and then, otherwise you see some, only the dirt which is on the glasses. And in the same way, the people who study the world around them, but they don't have clean consciousness, they only see the dirt which is around them in the matter. And then they say, yeah, this is my discovery. The world is like this. It's dirty. No, dear sir, the world is not dirty. Your consciousness is dirty. So that's the first quality. The second quality is even more interesting. It is said here that Svachatvam Shantam, Svachatvam, it is Svachatam Adhikaritvam. Adhikaritvam means there is no transformation or there is no vikar in our consciousness when it's clear. We can see very clearly that there is some vikara within our consciousness when we interact with this material nature. This vikara means the change of the state of consciousness. Right now you are awake, but if I talk too much, some of you will fall asleep. It's the same consciousness, but it will be transformed. You will see some dreams, and sometimes we know when we just fall asleep, there are different images come to our consciousness, and it's a very strange changed state of consciousness, little different consciousness, not exactly the same which we have when we are awake, or when we take some drugs. Hopefully you never took them. I didn't take either, but some people took, and it's changed state of consciousness. And also when we become very distracted, like right now you're sitting and you're listening and you're more or less concentrated on this, but we all know as soon as we open our mobile phone and start browsing through the internet, immediately the consciousness becomes distracted. We cannot really concentrate it on one subject matter. There is this attention deficit syndrome develops. So this all different transformations within our consciousness. Originally, our consciousness is very calm. It's very concentrated. Actually, by nature, we are concentrated. The distraction which is there, it's artificial. It's imposition upon our consciousness. Our original consciousness is concentrated. When we chant the holy name, and when our consciousness becomes distracted, when we go somewhere here or somewhere there, it means that there is some impurity within our heart. When the consciousness becomes clean, then naturally you will be very easily, you will concentrate on some subject matter according to your wish. What to speak about concentrating on the holy name. Therefore it is said in the third verse of Shikshastakam, Trinadapi Sunichina Taror Apisahishnuna Amanina Manadana Kirtaniya Sadahari. You will always be concentrated on the holy name when your consciousness becomes clean. This third state, third verse of Shikshastakam describes this clean consciousness. When Chitta or Chetana become clean, then we naturally become humble, we're very tolerant, and we are very concentrated. So when we chant and we feel that the mind has some vikshepa or distraction, it means some impurity is there. So what shall we do? We should continue chanting. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu promises to us that all these impurities will be purified, will be cleansed away from our consciousness by this process of chanting. So the second quality, avikaritvam, is glossed by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and also Sridhar Swami as laya vikshepa rahitvam. It means the absence of laya and vikshepa. Laya is this changed state of consciousness when tamas or tamagun is very heavily influencing our consciousness. When we go to sleep, when we are completely, I don't know what's going on. Just leave me alone. This is laya. Laya means the destruction of consciousness. Literally, laya means destruction, means destruction. When the consciousness is destroyed, no consciousness. When we're deep in sleep, there is no consciousness. But how is it possible that we don't have consciousness? It's because our chitta, we're always conscious, because conscious is the nature of the soul. But when the chitta is covered during the deep sleep or during some sleep state, is covered by tamagun, then it seems to us subjectively that we are unconscious. Or sometimes we may ask what happened when somebody faints, or when somebody takes a huge dose of drug, or when somebody is under anesthesia. What happens with the soul? Why we don't feel anything? This is exactly the reason. Different drugs, they impose very strong influence of tamagun upon our consciousness. And because of this tamagun, we become unconscious for some time, which is necessary when we do some surgery or whatever. But that's the mechanism behind this. But that's vikara. When this vikara is not there, then one always in this state of complete serene consciousness or very clean or clear consciousness. You know, there was a very interesting episode which Srila Radhanath Maharaj explains in his book of Journey Home. He speaks about quite famous impersonalist, Nim Karoli Baba. He was living there in Vrindavan, and according to him, he was a partial manifestation of Hanuman. But whoever he was quite an advanced impersonalist. Sometimes he was present simultaneously in different places. So he had his disciple, Ramdas, Western disciple, who made him very famous in the West. His Ramdas is quite famous figure in the esoteric scene in America. And he started his journey to spirituality from the experiments with drugs, specifically with LSD. You know, when you take LSD, you have all kinds of strange hallucination, and you feel like your consciousness expands, and you sometimes encounter God there or whatever, all kinds of strange stuff. Prabhupada always had to preach to his hippie disciples that LSD will not bring you closer to God. Because that was the very common misconception among those generation of hippie or spiritual seekers in America. Then by LSD you can get some spiritual experience. But very interesting, this episode which I want to tell you is a very interesting illustration to this verse. Because when Ramdas came to this Nim Karoli Baba, he could understand that he has a higher consciousness. And he wanted to explore or to see what effect LSD will have upon him, what he will do or what will happen with him if he takes LSD. And he gave him a huge dose of LSD, and he said, Guru Maharaj, please take it. You know, this is hippie mentality, you know. But anyway, he took it very nonchalantly, very peacefully. He took it. And what happened? Nothing happened. You know, his consciousness was not transformed. And that's a very important illustration or proof to this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, because in this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, Kapila Dev says that when the consciousness becomes clear, it's avikaritvam, no vikar. You take drugs, no vikar. You take a big dose of, you know, anesthetic, and nothing happens to you. You're not really stoned, so to speak. This is a hippie jargon, stoned. When you take some drug, you become like a stone. It basically means that tamagun becomes very prominent in your consciousness. But here it is said that despite of all these external influences, if you reach this state of clear consciousness, you remain non-affected by this. No change in your consciousness, and it means that you constantly concentrated on the holy name, Kirtaniya Sadahari, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. You constantly hear the sound of the holy name, and you understand by your clear consciousness that the sound of the holy name is non different from God himself, because you see how his image, his roop, is reflected from this nam in your consciousness. That's the second quality of chitta, of clean chitta. And the third quality is even more interesting. Why it is even more interesting? What could be more interesting than to have reflection of God within our consciousness? What could be more interesting than to become completely transcendental towards all this, influences, external influences? There is something which is more interesting. Well, maybe not more interesting, but maybe even more relevant to us. And this is also mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in his purport to this verse. The third quality is Shantatvam, and it means that when your consciousness becomes clean and clear, you become completely peaceful and happy. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Ashantatvam kutah sukham. How you can become happy without peace, without shanti. And Prabhupada explains this in the purport, and Vishwan Chakravarti Thakur, he glosses this Shantatvam. He says, Ragadi Rahityam means that there is no negative emotions. You don't experience negative emotions starting with raga. Raga means attachment. Raga means this passion. And when your consciousness becomes very peaceful, then you don't have any negative emotions. And it means that you're happy. You're totally happy. Why did I say that it's more relevant? Because we all want to become happy. And how we become happy? Chetadarpanam arjanam bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam. When our consciousness becomes clean through the chanting of the holy name, then all this davagni, this very fierce fire of material sufferings, of bhava, all these negative emotions which we have, grief, anger, attachment, envy, all this, desperation or despondency or dejection, all these negative emotions which we all have, fear, they all disappear from our consciousness. Shantatvam. Srila Prabhupada says when the drop of water becomes very calm, it's naturally transparent, and there is no this, all these waves in the consciousness. You become happy because the peaceful state is the happy state, and not only happy, because happy sometimes we become. Even in this world, we sometimes feel some elation, but we become completely immovably happy, or how you say this, completely nothing will unshakingly happy. Nothing will shock you or will disturb you or will throw you out of happiness. You will remain happy in all circumstances. That's the sign of clean, clear consciousness. If your consciousness is clean and clear, you remain happy under any circumstances. There is a beautiful story about Srila Prabhupada in this regard. I like to tell this story. When there was a very difficult situation in ISKCON, and there was a court case in America, and the programmers, they wanted to close down completely Krishna consciousness movement in America, and there were some fines towards devotees, and so many problems. And on the top of it, in India there were so many problems. In Bombay there were problems with this Mr. Nair in Juhu, and all these problems, they were building up. The pressure was building up, and Prabhupada was receiving bad news every day. And we all know we get little bad news, and our consciousness becomes completely, we become morose for some time. We become disturbed. So this whole heavy pressure was coming upon Prabhupada. And ultimately, some telegram came. I don't remember from where, from Australia or from some other part of the world. This telegram contained a very bad news. Very bad news. Something really bad happened. And Prabhupada opened this telegram and he read this telegram. And nothing changed in his, he remained very sober and very grave, as he usually was. But then he went to his room, and his secretary, he became really curious what's going on, what he will do. And he looked in the keyhole, what Srila Prabhupada will be doing. And Prabhupada, he saw that Prabhupada laid down on the floor and started laughing. He didn't express his laughter in front of everyone, but when he was alone in his room, he just started laughing, and he was laughing and laughing and laughing. And his secretary was looking at him, and he couldn't figure out what's going on. But that's exactly what's going on. As it is said here by Kapila Dev, that first quality is Svachhatvam, another quality is Avikaritvam, and the third quality is Shantatvam. And Shantatvam means Ragadi Rahityam. There's no negative emotions, no experience of negative emotions ever, never. So, but let me explain a little more if I have time. Madhavananda Prabhu or Tukaram Prabhu, please, or somebody.
Yes, Maharaj, we have time.
If I have some time more, or shall I finish?
Yes,
now?
Maharaj, we have time.
Because I wanted to say a few
Awadari.
other important things.
Maharaj, we have time.
I don't
please.
have to.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Maharaj,
yes.
we have time, please.
Okay. Okay. So I wanted to ask you a question and give an answer to the question which I will ask you. But please think about it first before I start speaking or answering this question. What does it mean, happiness? Why sometimes we are happy and sometimes we are unhappy? What does it mean in terms of consciousness? How should we interpret this in terms of consciousness? And why some people are constantly unhappy and some people are generally more happy? What quality of consciousness would determine this state of our well-being, of our emotional condition? So that's the question which I want you to think for a moment, because ultimately we're talking about this pure state of consciousness. Why pure state of consciousness is a happy consciousness? Why Srila Prabhupada was so emphatic about this? Why he always said chant and be happy, and that the happiness is a natural consequence of chanting? why are we so bold to say that when your consciousness is clean, it also means that it will become happy? So let me explain it a little bit. First of all, we should understand very clearly what unhappiness means. Unhappiness means contracted consciousness. When the consciousness is really kind of jammed or contracted. Why this, how our consciousness becomes contracted by the influence of false ego. It is explained again by Kapila Dev in this third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in the same chapter. It is said that the false ego limits our consciousness. Our consciousness is by nature is very, very expansive, and it is said when our consciousness becomes clean, we connect with Mahatattva. Why yogis can have all these powers? Because they connect with the the source of consciousness, Mahatattva, and they get all kinds of information from there. It's like we have our little individual computer, and in our computer we have some certain, information stored on the hard disk. But when our individual computer is connected with the, internet, with the source of information, then the information we can get unlimited amount of information. The information which is there on our hard disk is limited, but when we connect with the higher consciousness or higher memory or whatever, then the information becomes unlimited, and we can really get access to different sort of information. In the same way, yogi who cleanses his consciousness, he connects with this Mahatattva. And by connecting with Mahatattva, he gets all kinds of information, and he can, he can know what is within your consciousness, because he does not have limiting influence of false ego. False ego is by nature tamasic. Kapila Dev explains this very clearly, that this sattvic chitta, the next transformation of the sattvic chitta is tamasic false ego, ahankara. And when ahankara limits us, it basically kind of contracts the chitta by the pressure of tamagun. And when we are in this egoistic consciousness, our consciousness, even though it's expansive by nature, it's really huge, it's connected with this Mahatattva, it can include the Supreme Personality of Godhead within it. It is said in Upanishads that anantyaya kalpate, that our individual consciousness can become unlimited. Really, because the consciousness has this nature of expanding. So, but when it comes in contact with false ego, under the influence of false ego, it becomes very limited and contracted. By the limits of false ego, depending on the nature of false ego, it becomes less limited or more limited. So please now imagine the glass of water. And then also imagine the huge ocean. And you throw a little little grain of sand or little pebble into this glass of water. What will happen with this glass of water? There will be a lot of waves. And these waves will be coming to the limits of this and coming back and creating all kinds of disturbances. But when you throw the same pebble into, grain of sand into the ocean, what happened with the ocean? Not much. the ocean remains the ocean. There is not much disturbance. Why? Because it's so expensive. Even if there is some disturbance, it doesn't bounce back. So what happened when our consciousness is limited by our false ego, little disturbance is there, and this little disturbance create huge waves within our consciousness, because the consciousness is so contracted. And these waves within our consciousness, which forces us to lose composure and calmness and peacefulness, is called negative emotions. So all negative emotions are only there because of false ego. When we don't have tamasic false ego, when our consciousness is clean, there is no disturbances. And we only feel this calm and peaceful state of our consciousness, which means happy consciousness. So the question which I asked, what is the difference between happy consciousness and unhappy consciousness? Happy consciousness is expanded consciousness. And when we temporarily feel happy or through some artificial means, the consciousness becomes expanded. When people take LSD, then there is certain expansion of consciousness which they experience. Of course, when the influence of drug disappears, then the consciousness becomes even less contracted, and therefore you get depression. But that's the idea. Please catch this very important concept. The happiness means expanded consciousness. And the more our consciousness expanded, the happy we are. And what is the limiting adjunct of our consciousness is this false ego. I am this body. I am Indian. I am Russian. I am this. I am that. Or I'm an animal. I am this. I am that. This is all tamas. And until we remain in this tamasic state of consciousness or egoistic consciousness, selfish consciousness, I am this. I am a woman. And therefore I have to be, I have to fight with all the men. You will never become happy. Like Prabhupada, he made this correction to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj said, Prabhupada, I came to this Krishna consciousness movement and saw that there is no chauvinism here, that there is no racism here. But I encountered the same racism here in Krishna consciousness movement. And Prabhupada looked at him and said, yes, it's there, but you're not different. You're not much different because you feel it, you notice it, because it means that you already also have the same bodily consciousness. And bodily consciousness means unhappy consciousness. Unless and until we retain consciousness of our body within the limits or parameters of our false ego, we will remain unhappy. So that's a very important concept. And, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he explains 5 stages of expansion of consciousness. He says that achadita chetana, and then, how it's called? Before mukudita chetana. How it's called? Yeah. Forget, I'm sorry. Achadita.
Maharaj, Sankuchit Chetana.
Sankuchita, yeah, Sankuchita. Yeah, Sankuchita Chetana. Achadita Chetana, when the consciousness is in the trees, you don't really know whether they're conscious or not. In the West, people think that there is no consciousness in the trees because it's achadita. It's completely contracted. Sankuchita means there is some little manifestation of consciousness, and that's what you can see in the animals and in birds. You can see that there is some consciousness, but it's very limited consciousness. And then there is Mukulita Chetana, and Vikasita Chetana and Purna Vikasita Chetana. Mukulita Chetana, budding consciousness, when consciousness becomes little more expanded in a human form of life. But still, because it's limited, it's still in a budding stage, it's not really expansive, then you don't really see the reality as it is. You can limitedly see the cause and effect. You know, the more expansive your consciousness becomes, the more clearly you see the cause and effect relationship in this world, and ultimately you will be able to see the cause of all causes. Why people reject the existence of God? Only because their consciousness is so contracted, is so limited. So they cannot really see, you know, the cause beyond the causes. They only see the immediate causes and try to study immediate causes. This Mukulita Chetasa means scientists. It's a very low state of consciousness, really low. I am speaking about myself. I am speaking on my experience. You know, it's a very limited approach to reality. It's Mukulita Chetasa. And when the reality becomes more, you know, more expanding and becomes more flourishing, when the lotus of our consciousness starts expanding, then we will clearly understand, yes, there is God, and this reflection of the image of God will take place within our consciousness. And at the same time, we become happy because this expansion of consciousness will take place. And when it's Purna Vikasita, then, which is according to Bhakti Vijnana, is the stage when one experiences bhava or emotions towards the Lord, that's the happiest state of consciousness. So the more contracted the consciousness is, the more unhappy you become. And that all depends on the level of our selfishness, of our complete concentration on false identity, the identity of this material body. And there is one more little thing which I wanted also to tell in this connection, which could be relevant, is that, you know, when we chant, very important thing, which will be the last thing which I tell now. When we chant, we sometimes feel happiness, sometimes we feel that our consciousness is expanding, sometimes we feel very generous, very liberal, you know, and sometimes we don't feel this. Why? Because we can chant within our false ego, within our ahankar, or we can chant without ahankar. You know, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Naham Vipro Nacha Narapati, Napi Vaishyo Nasudra, Naham Varni Nacha Grihapati Navanastoya Tirva, Kintu Prodyan, Nikila Paramananda Purnamritat Bher, Gopi Bhartur Padakamalar, Dasa Dasa Anudasaha. He says, he explains the consciousness in which we should chant. If we chant within the parameters of our ego, that's called nama parat. When we chant and we're always concerned, this is I am who I am this and I'm that, I'm senior devotee, and everyone should respect me. You know, good luck. You may remain senior devotee for few billion lifetimes. And you will never become anyone else because you're senior devotee, because this is material identification. And you will always demand respect. Why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stresses so much this third verse of Shikshashtaka? Because this is the state beyond ego. Trinadapi Sunichina, no ego, not even ego of a grass. Grass has some ego. I am a grass. It's a very low ego, but still it's an ego. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Trinadapi Sunichina, more tolerant, more humble than the grass, not even this ego. Then only the chanting will be pure chanting. So it basically means that we should very carefully avoid this egoistic mentality while we're chanting. And for that, before starting chanting, we have to really prepare who I am. We have to say, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm nothing. I'm not this body. Let me chant without this. I am Gopi Bhartur Pada Kamalayar. My relationship are with this, the lover of gopis in Vrindavan. This is what I am, and this is how I chant. Otherwise, aham mamadi paramo. I will remain in the center. So I will confess to you now my own experience. What will happen? What happens when we chant? You know, sometimes we chant and we feel a lot of satisfaction in the chanting, and we are, we are somewhere in the different space. We are not in this material space. By the mercy of the holy name, we are transferred into some other space where Krishna is there. We may not see him directly, but we kind of feel he is there and he is reciprocating with us. We chant, and it's very nice. But then something happens, our false ego becomes alarmed and says, something is wrong with you, you are not with me anymore. You're somewhere beyond. And false ego throws you into this space, into the material space, which is limited by our false ego. And we remain chanting. The same track is going on, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. But it's not the same, because already you have all concerns, and you think how you will enjoy next week, and how you will enjoy next year, and how will you will enjoy when you become sannyasi and guru, and how you will enjoy when you get married, or how you will, this is all concepts which are flooding our consciousness. As soon as we allow our false ego to influence our consciousness while chanting. And even though we're chanting, we're only thinking about how I will enjoy. And in this world of our false ego, please notice it, take a note of it. In the world of false ego, everything is very clear. Everything is very understandable, In the world of false ego, you know all the information, you call this and that, this is your enemy, this is your friend, this is your good friend, this is your competitor, this is all, your false ego defined everything. It's like, dog. When dog is going around, every now and then he raises his leg and passes some urine, because he says, I know this tree, this is my tree, and to prove that this is my tree, there will be some urine of mine. So the same way, the false ego, it maps the world around you by different means, by putting different labels. This is good, this is bad, this is, this is myself. And you live in this very narrow world of your false ego, and you try to chant Hare Krishna. Good luck. There will be no Hare Krishna. It will be just Hare Krishna Parad. So to chant clearly, you have to go beyond, and for that you have to understand that I'm not this body. I don't want to be limited by this body. I don't want to be, I don't want to be a senior devotee. I don't want to be a junior devotee. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself says, I am not senior devotee. I am not junior devotee. I am nobody. Nobody of this world. Naham parni, nacha, grihapatir, navanastoya, tirva. I'm not a sannyasi. Not a sannyasi, and this beautiful garland is not mine. Nothing of this. So if we chant with this consciousness, how, I'm nobody and I have to tolerate, including the onslaughts of my own ego. As soon as my own ego speaks something, I have to tell him, shut down. I'm just, Gopi Bhartur Padakamala Dasa Dasa Anudasa. I don't care what you have to say. If we are very consistent with this, then very quickly the purification of consciousness will take place. Very quickly we will experience these results of the expansion of our consciousness. Very quickly, everything which is promised by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the first verse of Shikshastakam will take place. But if not, if we insist in chanting within this little room of our false ego, little camera of our false ego, a little prison cell of our false ego, then it will be very difficult. It will take very long time. It's a science. Therefore, we have to understand what's going on, and we should try to chant as properly as possible. That means without false ego. And as soon as we notice that we're again back to the prison cell of our false ego, where everything is very clear and very dirty and very, and very familiar to us, we should just say, I don't want to be in this prison cell anymore. I've been in this prison cell for too long. I want to get free from this. So that's my little message. And, connecting to the beginning of my class, I said that the government was trying to put devotees in prison in the Soviet Union. And that was definitely not a very good thing. But basically, devotees knew that some devotees were put in prison. Some devotees did experience this, events in their life when they were put in prison. But amazingly, they remained free even in prison. Why? Because they were chanting Hare Krishna. This is exactly the story from Chaitanya Bhagavat when Haridas Thakur was put in prison, and when he told all the prisoners, just remain in this prison, because in this prison you may become free. So the real way to freedom is chanting Hare Krishna, when we can become free from this life sentence of our false ego. We're all sentenced for life in our false ego, but there is a way to get free from this by chanting Hare Krishna, if I understand the science behind it. And I try to explain few aspects of this great science. I'm really sorry for speaking so long. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Maharaj, thank you so much. You gave us so much to think about. I really, really appreciate that. Now, I think the devotees, maybe you can understand a little something why Maharaj is so popular in Russia and how powerful he is. I'm so happy that you didn't just tell us some stories about Russia. Rather, you shared with something very important about our consciousness. I'd just like to ask Amritesh Gaur Prabhu if he could organize the questions. He usually does that really nicely. Can you do that, Prabhuji? Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Maharaj, really it was so absorbing that we all were very happy and we thought if we could hear more. However, whatever you told, we noted down and we will try to think upon them. There are some questions here and there. Tukaram Prabhu has a question. I'll ask Tukaram Prabhu to start with him.
Maharaj, I would like to summarize whatever you have discussed. Please correct me if I am wrong. So you told that Prakriti, which is in balanced state, so when there is a glance of Lord, that is Kala, and Jiva enters, so and because of their karma, so they enter into material realm. So then Mahat Tattva, which is the first material kind of, there is an imbalance in Prakriti, and this Mahat Tattva is Sattvic, which is the covering on the Jiva or Chitta. Maharaj, is this correct?
Yes, ma'am. It's
And then
predominantly sattvic. It's a very great degree of sattva in Mahatattva. Even though there is no pure sattva, because material sattva always mixed, but it's a very high degree of sattva in this Mahatattva, originally now Chitta, without the influence of ego.
And Maharaj, you told that this Mahatattva, because it is predominantly sattvic, so when it comes in contact with matter, just like water when it comes in contact with earth, it become polluted. So originally the qualities of Mahatattva is, you elaborated like Swachhattam, that is transparent, clean and pure. And that means that it is actually Bhagavad Bimba Grahitvam. That means it is reflecting the image of Lord, the name, fame, qualities of Lord in its pure state. Swachhatvam. And other is no vikar. There is no vikar. Avikaritvam. That means laya and vikshep rahitam. So just like when we are in deep sleep or we are in unconscious state, laya and vikshep. So it is laya vikshep rahitam. And then the third quality is shantatva, immovably or unshakingly happy. And then you define that happiness is state of happiness means expanded consciousness, and unhappiness means contradicted consciousness. And you give the example of when in ocean, when the glass of water, it's a small consciousness and the ocean is big consciousness, and they're connected. So even if there is some pebbles, there is no difference. It does not make any difference. But if the consciousness is contracted with the boundaries of false ego, that is tamasic, so then there are disturbances when even a small pebble goes into it. So Maharaj, so we learned this, and I just wanted to relate with, like I was hearing few days back about Virtasura. So Virtasura during his fight with Indra, so in such moment also his consciousness is, as you told, unshakingly happy, and Bhagavad Bimba Grahitvam. That means he's completely pure, without any rag, without any dvesh. So he actually because he was absorbed constantly in thinking about the Lord. And Maharaj, you concluded by saying that pure chanting means when we do not have when we have this consciousness that I am not Varni, I am not Shudra, I am not Sannyasi, I am not. So the pure consciousness is Gopir Bhartu Pad Kamalaru Das Dasan. So Vritasur also had this consciousness that let me become the Das Anudas of the devotees. So we could relate that. So I just want to say, Maharaj, that just like when technical students sit together, so they did not discuss externals, they discuss kind of like in electronics. So those are customers, they see that what is on the display, but actually the engineers know what is going in the circuit. So you have actually revealed the circuit of Krishna consciousness to us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Some devotees have some questions, Maharaj. So Amritesh Prabhu will be reading it.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, you also spoke about that how these 5 degrees of Chaitanya are there, and there also you told about how means at the highest stage it goes even to bhava or emotions, and starting from the Achadita Chaitanya. Maharaj, I have got a small question here, that if this expanded consciousness is something which is free from the false ego, now a natural question will come out that when we are also trying to chant and we are also trying to become Krishna conscious, why this false ego is not leaving us, and how we can attain to this state of expanding consciousness?
It's not leaving us because we are attached to it. there is certain attraction in this state of consciousness, because everything is kind of familiar to us, and we are controlling. We have an illusion that we are controlling everything. We know everything. This is when we are, when we are in this state of spiritual consciousness without false ego. Everything is unknown to us. It's a very insecure position in one sense, because Krishna, he's a supreme autocrat. What he will do next moment, and I cannot control him. It's very dangerous. So basically, we are attracted to remain in our. It's like you're sitting in your little room and you know everything, and you're going to some grocery shop, and you've been doing it for so many years, and then all of a sudden somebody tells you, now you will go to America, and America is such a wonderful place. There are so many grocery shops there and things like this, and you say, no, I don't need many grocery shops. I know something which is nearby, and I know everything. So what I mean to say is that when we go to some other state beyond our false ego, it may look very insecure, because we're not in control there. We know that we're not in control there. Whereas in the world of our false ego, we are totally in control. We know what will happen, at least this is the illusion which we have. Of course, we are not in control here either. So that's why people are little attached to their, world which is so familiar, and they're afraid to go to some expanded realm of consciousness where there's not much familiar. We become a little afraid. If you go to Jagannath Puri and you swim, of course you probably don't swim, but it's when you are alone with this ocean, you become little insecure, and you feel better. I'll be in my little small space where everything is so familiar and so controlled by me. So.
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, the Sangram Biswal, one devotee of our base, he's asking, what's the shortest and fastest means of getting rid of all the false ego and expand our consciousness to Purna Vikasita Chitana? It's kind of this question.
Fastest way is to serve the devotees. To serve basically everyone, to serve Prabhupada and his mission, and to serve all the devotees in this mission. That's the fastest way, because when we're attached to our ego is always something which want to lord it over. But when we become servant of the devotees, it's the best way. The fastest way is not to become a senior devotee, is to remain a junior devotee. If you always remain a junior devotee, that's the fastest way. As soon as you become senior devotee, that's a very difficult and arduous way. And especially if you become a sannyasi, that's a very difficult way.
Maharaj, you are the living example. Maharaj, one devotee asking, he's telling, please accept my obeisances. How to deal with material and annoying people in day-to-day life?
Say it again, what? How to
deal with material and annoying people in our day-to-day life?
They are annoying, and you should not be annoyed. and then you will be able to deal. If they are annoying and you are annoyed, then you will not be able to deal with them properly. So the first condition is that, see why people are annoying, because we take them too seriously. Why our mind can be very annoying and agitating, because we take our mind too seriously. As soon as we, don't take our mind too seriously, as soon as we don't take, when there is a little child, and the child may be very annoying. He may be running here and there and yelling and, crying and doing all kinds of things. But if you don't take him too seriously, you know that it's just his childish tricks, then you will be able to calm him down very quickly. But as soon as you become provoked by this child, agitated by the mischief of this child, it's not going to help. You will not be able to pacify the child. You will be only disturb yourself. So basically, not to deal properly means you don't take their minds too seriously. Don't deal with their minds, deal with their soul. We have to take them seriously, but as the spirit soul who wants love, who wants some spiritual relationship with Krishna. But if you take their minds too seriously, then you will be agitated and you will not be able to deal with them properly, and you will not be able to pacify them. So don't take their minds too seriously. Just happens.
More questions?
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, I have one more question, which I don't know, it's a little a foolish question. Here in the beginning, you saw that verse from Bhagavatam 3rd canto. There Prabhupada was saying that what is this pure state of consciousness, which you explained in 3 qualities. Here Prabhupada says that when we get to this pure consciousness, we can see the reflection of Supreme Personality of Godhead, and also we can see our own existence or our own self. I just want to say that what is really the difference between just seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead and again seeing ourselves? Is there any difference, or it's the same thing?
It is explained many times by our acharyas and Srila Prabhupada and in scriptures. Then you can only see yourself clearly when you see the Lord, because you cannot see yourself without the sun. The Lord is like the sun. When the sun is there, you can see the sun and you can see yourself. When there is no sun, you don't see yourself. When it's pitch dark, then you don't see yourself and you don't see the sun. So therefore, our way for self-realization, we emphatically say that there is no self-realization without God realization. You cannot understand yourself without realizing God. So in one sense, it's the same, because you can only see yourself when you see God. You can only realize who you are when some reflection of God, when God is reflected in your consciousness, which is, as Prabhupada aptly say, which means Krishna consciousness. He says pure consciousness means Krishna consciousness, because when the consciousness is pure, Krishna is reflected there. His image is reflected there. Therefore, it's Krishna consciousness.
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, actually, I had heard from one devotee of Kolkata. He is studying with your guidance the Srimad Bhagavatam full topic, Kanai Natsala Prabhupada, Kolkata. And he told me that how wonderful your classes are. I could understand very nicely when I heard it today. Madhanand Prabhu, I requested to speak.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj. There's many things I was thinking about, but I wanted to kind of stay out of the way and let the other devotees get some chance with you. Thank you again. I really liked your point about upadhis are like a dog passing urine, and identifying this as myself, because those upadhis for the consciousness of the conditioned souls are a kind of violence, because I own you, you are mine, and that's just like the dog passing urine. This is my tree, this is my place. So the upadhis are like passing urine. I really appreciate it, and so many wonderful points. Very, very thoughtful. I'm just so indebted to you, Maharaj. You really make us think in a very, very deep way, and you speak in a very relevant way. I know Brajabanita's here tonight too, watching. She's in complete ecstasy. She's very happy. And I have to say, you're going to cause yourself maybe some troubles by giving this class, because now everybody here in Orissa, they're going to want you to come.
I love what you say. I will come for sure.
But you can't just come in secret and stay by yourself. You'll have to come and give a class at the temple in Bhubaneswar. And you'll have to come again to our ashram. We have a nice guest room for you here.
I'll definitely come. Like,
Hare Krishna. So thank you again, Maharaj, so much. Tukaram Prabhu, do you want to add anything before we go? Let Maharaj go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Maharaj. We are very grateful that you come. And Madan, too, we are very grateful to you for bringing Maharaj here on this platform.
thank you. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. So just let us know when you're coming to Puri, Maharaj.
Yes, you will be
Very
the first.
happy. And I know if sometimes Anapayani is here, sometimes Brajabanita may be here, they'll be in great ecstasy if you come. We have some cooks for you or someone like that too. Brajabanita is there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
His Holiness Bhakti Vijnana Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.